Welcome to the Equipping Leaders podcast Leader Study Series. I'm Natasha, a leader development professional, and I would say that leadership is my passion. I love leading and supporting leaders in their leadership journey.
And I'm Corey, a program manager, emerging leader, and overall leadership enthusiast.
In this Leader Study Series, we're going through the 7 episodes of the 2011 sci-fi show Terra Nova. For each episode, we will deconstruct the leaders and decisions of the characters on the show. Leadership is demonstrated in many different ways, and we're looking forward to talking about the actions, responses, and opportunities to show up as a leader.
Terra Nova aired in 2011, so there will be spoilers in these episodes. Throughout the episodes, we'll talk about emotional intelligence, difficult conversations, building and maintaining trust, and more. Let's jump in.
Okay, so we are on our last episode of Terra Nova. So the season, the only season, sadly, has just 7 episodes. And so today we're just going to talk about the individual characters and kind of the story arc that we saw through the last several episodes that we've been talking about. So who do you want to start with?
Let's start with Jim.
All right, Jim Shannon. So yeah, his story arc, or his leadership arc, I should say, was interesting. And I think it might be one of the ones I see the most with the leaders that I work with and the leaders that I've had, as far as having an expectation of how people should treat you, and of what you're kind of entitled to in a certain role, versus like the reality of every single day you have to prove, and with every new group you have to prove why you're the leader and how you're leading them.
Yeah, expectations versus reality with him from a leadership perspective was key. I also thought something I noticed about Jim's leadership was like a refined levity almost that he brought forward to things. It wasn't like it wasn't like a Columbo like play stupid type thing, but there was this sort of understanding, like when there were smarter people in the room, like Elizabeth, right? His spouse, scientific, medical, very, very smart. He just let them talk, right? He listened. But he didn't try to overpower. He didn't get this like complex about him. Like he didn't shut people down. He just accepted that. He brought it in, and I think that he used some humor to sort of diffuse when they maybe felt like that communication was difficult, right? Like they didn't want to embarrass him or make him feel bad. He would break that ice immediately and just, in so many words, just be like, nope, I'm the dumbest guy in the room. I got it. If you guys are going to talk and I'm not going to understand it, totally fine. Just let me know what you need me to do on the back end of it. And I think that's such a good quality, right? Like didn't get wrapped up in that arrogance, just wanted to contribute to the goal how he could, and understanding that he wasn't going to know everything.
Yes, his ability to use humor and to not take himself seriously, I think, is probably Jim's greatest strength as a leader. Because even when his daughter was sick, Zoe was sick, and then she was worried because he started to sneeze, right? And so just like, and yes, it's a kid, but at the same time, just like when he said, oh, I don't catch colds, just crooks, right? He has like these like little things where he just kind of knows how to put someone's mind at ease, makes a little joke, but also kind of like refocuses on, here's what I'm here to do. And yeah, his ability to also challenge leadership in a way that was not aggressive, but that was just like, I'm on a fact, like his intent was very clear that he cared about Terra Nova. And so therefore, when he did push back on things or he disagreed with things, it was never a public disagreement. And he would come with facts as to why. It wasn't like, oh, I've got a vibe that this isn't working. Nope. These are the things that, based on my experience and my expertise, tell me this. I'm going to go find more data, and then I'm going to come back and challenge privately that leader who said it. So I think, yeah, he had a lot of really great skills that even watching them emerge and how they kind of evolved even just over the course of a few episodes was really interesting.
Yeah, it's such a great point because one of the other things too is I think because he was open and honest and transparent about what he knew and what he didn't know, what he felt like he was an expert in and what he felt like he wasn't very knowledgeable in. When he did challenge something that didn't seem right or didn't feel right, and especially given the way, like you said, he didn't do it publicly, pe people stopped and listened, right? He got far more accomplished, his voice was heard, his concerns were heard and thought about because it wasn't this constant he wasn't always a contrarian, right? And it wasn't always gotta be his way, and I think that there's so much power to that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he had essentially kind of two storylines, two leadership storylines. One was with his family, which is, we all know that's a very different than our professional lives. But what was so interesting for me, I think, also was to see him execute so effectively as a professional. And then it was almost like all these things he knew and learned as a leader, he just threw them out the window when it came to interacting with his own family. So I think that's also something that we forget, that a lot of these leadership skills, they transcend not only industries, but they transcend situations. A good leader, of course, cares about their, the people around them and all of that. But it's like, if you were to look at, like, would Jim have come in as heavy-handed with some of the soldiers who reported to Taylor as he did with his son, and give them no explanation and just say, like, do as I say, not as I do? So it was just so interesting to then see him, like, as a professional, being open and listening, and then almost like this completely dichotic approach to, like, leading within a family.
Yeah, and I don't know if we disagreed, but I think we had differencing opinions, which I think is the definition of disagree, but whatever. Glossing over that. Uh, I view Jim as being like he's the perfect example of a middle manager who can speak up to leadership and that kind of thing. He does that very well and effectively. Terrible small team uh, skills, right? And I've used family as the small team, right? Far more of an intimate relationship, day to day operations, right? That's where you're integrating. That's um, it's where there is I'm failing to come up with a better word, but it's early of like there's a power dynamic there where he is at the tip of that pyramid, right? It's like middle management's in an hourglass, right? Everybody below them, they're at that tip of that pyramid. Everybody above them, they're a small point, but they've got all that weight of like that leadership kind of pressing down on them of senior leadership. And like you said, he can communicate up pretty effectively and work that level, but going down to that small team, he's just not very successful.
I do remember us talking about this and maybe disagreeing, because yeah, I definitely, like, believe that you, like, an effective leader does the 360-degree leadership.
Yeah.
And then I have definitely heard people say, oh, well, this person's really good at managing up. If you can manage up, but you can't manage across or down, then you're an ass kisser.
Yeah.
That's what you're good at. So, and I think that's where we had
I don't know
disagreed,
why you had
because
to attack me personally, but okay, cool. Cool, cool, cool.
Corey's great at managing up. No, so it's but that was just it, where it's like, when we saw, however, when we saw Jim interact with Lieutenant Washington, or interact with Malcolm or Elizabeth, he it was similar to how he interacted with Taylor,
Yeah.
right? We didn't really get to see him have subordinates in this situation, but at the same time, it was like all of that was pretty solid. So yeah, he was good at managing up, he was good at managing across, but in certain situations, yeah, that managing down was not, he was not effective.
It's funny too, listening to you talk about that and thinking about it. There was also a weird level of like uh I don't know what the right word is. I'm gonna say expectation management, but like one-on-one interactions that he had with Maddie or Zoe versus ones that he had with like uh
Gosh.
Josh, yeah, sorry, could name one right out of my head. Josh, right, one-on-one, he had some great interactions with them and some great like kind of leadership coaching, again, it's family, so it's a little bit more fatherly, but like, you know, the expectations of Josh and, were very heavy-handed versus those for Maddie, where you're seeing semi-similar age and capabilities of things. So that's, yeah, I guess, yeah, that's, I didn't think about it like that too.
Yeah. Yeah, so keeping in with the Shannon family, let's talk about Elizabeth.
What a powerhouse. Um, yeah, like, I don't know. I just think like super, but then again, when you also look at prep time or like prep or whatever you want to call it, Jim, not to go back, but Jim in prison for like 2 years, 5 years. I don't remember. Right, first episode, he's in prison. Uh, Elizabeth get prepping for the Terra Nova mission to get out there, and so that's it. Kind of comes from, we look at, they're both wildly successful, I think, as leaders, but from two different paths. And I think Elizabeth's ability to have that background knowledge about where they were going, what the expectations were, the ability to prep and plan for that, she's able to execute very efficiently. Um, and did a great job because she sort of went in and was immediately sort of that lead medical doctor person organizing that team under her. And you really, again, short amount of episodes, short amount of time, but it was definitely inferred that there was never any question of her ability to make decisions or have the best interest of Terra Nova at the forefront of her mind versus Jim, where there was a little bit of shakiness there, even with his and Commander Taylor's relationship, right? It's like fresh book, fresh start, but we'll see how this plays out. So yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on her.
Yeah, I think that with Elizabeth, she had such a strong background, but she didn't lead with that, which I think was
Yeah,
really like
good point.
that's such a quality that I think certain leaders have. And it tends to be people who are a little bit more on the intellectual side, not that others aren't, but it's like that's not relatable if you just come in with like, I have all this education and I know all these things. Like, cool story, nerd, right? Like
Yeah.
nobody cares. But it's like she doesn't lead with that. So she leads about like the care of this, like the care of her family, the care of Terra Nova. What is it that I'm contributing now? So moving forward, what am I contributing now? And I think that's one of the reasons why people also trusted her level of expertise because it wasn't her trying to build something for herself, a name or a reputation or anything. She already had that. She wasn't worried about it. So now I'm actually here to help this make a better future for the world and of course for her own children. So
Yeah, she had such a curiosity too, and I that's not I think that's a personality trait more than a leadership trait. But I think good leaders probably have a good level of like curiosity and excitement about their area of focus. But like I think it was maybe the first or second episode, there was that guy that had like that giant like boil thing on his back, and she was just like, this is fascinating and interesting, and was learning. And it's, I think that too is like she was excited to be there and excited to go to work every day. And that's, I think you need that to be a good effective leader. I think you need to like what you're doing actually.
absolutely. Yeah, the passion for what you're doing. Because if it's not there, like there is, and we've talked about this time and time again, where the, leadership can be a burden. Like it's not like all rainbows and unicorns and everybody loves me because I'm in. No, like hard decisions have to be made. And there are days when, I mean, you're never going to please everybody. And then there are days that just are harder than others. And if you don't at the core really like what you're doing, like it's pointless. You're going to be one of those just like really salty, disconnected leaders. So yeah, I agree that her like curiosity and even just like she's seen all these things before as a doctor, but now seeing these new things in this new place, that essence of curiosity and lifelong learning, I think are really important. And I think when leaders can have that curiosity and they can follow their curiosity to different things, I think that's what leads to more creativity and innovation and ultimately that adaptability where it's like, oh, if I did learn about this other thing, instead of worrying like, oh, how's that going to impact what I know and what I think and all that. And so it's like, oh no, let me follow that and see how much more I could think or how much more I could learn.
Yeah, no, such a good point. But yeah, I think that coupled with um her she did really well under pressure, right? A lot of her situations were very intense, and maybe that's just all medical folks, right? I'm not that guy, but they're life or death situations were most of what she ran into on a day-to-day basis. People weren't going to her with their problems because they were healthy, right? Or they weren't afraid or scared or not feeling well. So I think there's like it's not just compassion, but it's like that calmness under pressure that she also had in spades and was able to still be very effective, because there were a lot of situations where if I was in those, I'd probably shut down, right? Like it's just that's too much pressure, too much to worry about, too much to think about. And, again, medical problems, very complex problems, a lot of different potentials, outcomes, a lot of different solutions. Some could be really good, some could be really bad. So, like I said, I think that that's a quality too that she really excelled in as well, is that coolness and clear head under, immense pressure.
Yeah. So someone else who had, I think, many of those qualities was Sky, being one of the younger members of Terra Nova, and not really having any parents there at Terra Nova, kind of being under the mentorship a bit, if you will, of Commander Taylor. She, from the jump, she showed such emotional restraint, and also truly caring about the other people of Terra Nova. So we saw that the most probably with Josh, because that was kind of how that interaction was set up. But it was like you could tell also that she liked this person, but he had other things. And so she was like, well, we'll make him happy here. Right. And so I think that that is also, that aspect of leadership is really important, because it's like, is it still good for the team? Is it still good for the company? What is this person's interests and curiosities, and where will that take them? Sidney Finkelstein, he wrote this really great book called Super Bosses. And in it, he's talking about how leaders know how to build other leaders. So once they've built those leaders, you can't hold on to them and hoard them. It's a cyclical thing where you need to get them into the next thing that's going to help their development and growth, even that if that has nothing to do with you. And I think that in these different interactions, we saw Sky kind of embodying that, where it's like, maybe it's not the best thing for me personally, but it's not about me, right? It's about this group. It's about keeping people engaged in the mission and in Terra Nova. So how do we move that forward?
Yeah, I love that. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Now you got me making notes.
But I'll say also outside of that, and we can come back when you're done with your notes there, but outside of that also, it just like when they're being attacked by dinosaurs, when all these different things happen, when the power goes out, she was also very good at finding like, where am I needed? And then how do I impact that? Right. So yeah, she had a lot of strong leadership skills.
Yeah, like you said, compassion, right, was a big piece of that. But I also think when you're talking about Josh sort of having those other goals and like, let's see what we can do for him, that accommodation piece I think is huge. Where it, like you said, made that assessment. Is it going to affect the team? Is it going to affect the company? Because if it's something small that we can do to make this person more uh, effective in the team, make them happy, make them um, you know well, why not do that? And I think that that's great, not to just use a cookie cutter for, employees. Like, I think one of the best examples I see of that in my industry these days, it's sort of stupid, but um, the standing desk thing, right? Like some people really want a standing desk, and it's like, really, how much money does that cost in the grand scheme of things? What does it do? How does it? It doesn't really make things that complicated. So give people that ability to have a standing desk, and the amount of like weird joy that brought people blew my mind, right? I'm like, I'm happy to sit. Thank you. Like somebody worked very hard to invent these chairs. I want to make full use of them. And but yeah, I mean that's just like the little things that you can do within an organization when you stop trying to just like employees and instead like individual people that all are working together. I think that's huge too. And yeah, she really has that skill, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And then again, her just ability to find where can I be of the most help right now? And demonstrating these leadership skills without needing to be the leader. I don't need to be the one in charge. I don't need to be the one giving orders. Although she's very good at keeping people focused when they're starting to freak out. But again, she's not like, I'm the leader. And so I think that goes to the person with the most authority does not necessarily mean that that person is the leader, right? It's the people who demonstrate these types of qualities that keep people focused, keep their minds in the game, and keep everything going.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the reasons why Sky, and not to jump to somebody else, but like a Lieutenant Washington, for example, I think one of the reasons why they're able to be so effective as leaders is because those that they have that lead over them, in this case, like Commander Taylor, um, he creates an environment where they are able to be effective, right? Like um, he's managing the things that he needs to manage at his level. There's not that bleed down or delegation where now they're able to be effective in the things that ultimately Commander Taylor needs them to be effective in. So I think that that's something too that, like I said, Lieutenant Washington, when it comes to the way that she interacts or works with other people with Commander Taylor, me, I really like that concept of effective followership, and I think Lieutenant Washington is a really effective follower and a leader, right? She plays both roles, but a lot of that is because she does not have to worry about all those things above her, at that Commander Taylor level, and I think Sky falls into that same sort of category.
Agreed. And I like the shift to Lieutenant Washington because yeah, she does a great job of managing the strategic sometimes right there with Commander Taylor. And then also the like nuance of let me teach you all how to find grubs in a tree should you be lost out in the woods, right? Like, so being able to do both things. So having her hand firmly and like, let me help, actively help, give people the skills that they need to be effective in this environment should something go awry or whatever. And then also, what is this like strategy here? I will hold down the fort. I understand the intent and the mission. So yeah.
Yeah, and uh, going a bit, going a little abroad, but I think I think that's something that, especially coming from doing a lot of industry specific training in my background, right? One of the things that I think Commander Taylor does so well with Lieutenant Washington, and this is a lot of conjecture from a 7 episode television or 8 episode television show, right? But the fact that Commander Taylor was able to identify that Lieutenant Washington had that skill of being able to teach and train while also being able to be, a close advisor, right, to Commander Taylor, and allowing that bridge between what's happening directly now with that senior level leadership and then that training piece and being able to integrate that into that training pipeline to the workforce or the colony in this case. That's something a lot of organizations really don't think, oh, there's training going on over there, they do the training thing, we'll do that. There isn't a tie-in, right? There's that ability to have those live on the spot updates, for that ability of like saying to the why do we need to know about this grub being edible or something. uh but she could say, well, because these, this, that, and the other thing, right? Or, why do I need to know how this security fence works? Well, because we have these threats from the Sixers or whatever. Like, again, a lot of conjecture there, but there's a direct link, right? An artery from the senior most level leadership to the person doing that training down to those folks. And I just, like I said, that's something that I wish more organizations would have.
That's a great point because I hadn't thought about that from that perspective that she brings that, ties that, like pull so many words. Here we go. Let's get on with it. Pulls the thread that helps everybody understand. And yeah, I'm glad now let's talk about Taylor for the next 45 minutes because I'm a big Taylor fan. But yeah, he is also doing what great leaders do, and that's setting the environment. Like, yes. I'm setting this environment to make sure that the things that I ask people to do, they can actually do, and that they'll be successful at doing. And I think there's a measure of identifying people's strengths, right? Knowing the people that you lead. And then there's also a measure of trust where it's like, now I'm going to ask you to do this thing. I'm going to trust that you're going to get it done and that you're actually going to do it. So, yeah,
It's
it's a
because it's
starting
amazing
point.
too. Yeah, he's Commander Taylor. He is hiring those people, so to speak, right? He's the one who's has that list of like who are the potential candidates to come over or who's getting sent over. He's making those decisions, right? Who's the right fit? What do we need? What are those resources? And so, um, yeah, that that ability and everything being tied back like to a goal, right? Like build Terra Nova, make it safe, right? Make it an effective, safe community. That's a very easy mission statement, right? You're going to go work in the kitchen. Why? People need to eat. Why do they need to eat? Because we need to be successful, right? They need to have energy to do these other things. Like there was always a direct link up to a core, easy goal for everyone to, work towards. So it was never like, why am I doing this? Very easy to understand why you need to do this.
Yeah. And again, there's that clarity that he provided to every person within that colony.
Yeah.
And I think just a slight shift to some other qualities he had, a fearlessness and like a badassery. Again, it's a TV show, but here's this guy, giant weapons, fighting dinosaurs. You'll want to follow that person, like you just
Yeah.
do. And so I think that piece is also really important. And it's not about like, oh, every leader has to be this like physical specimen. But at the same time, there's this matter of like, he took risks and he was so courageous in so many different ways. And I think that we could see more of that in today's society, right? We don't see that as often, just that like a leader who is courageous in these different ways.
Also super self-sacrificing. I mean, clearly he needed a large or extra large t-shirt, but he gave those up to people and would only wear small or extra small shirts. And I just think, that level of being uncomfortable, just that skin tight shirt on him, like, man, what a selfless guy.
You're right. When you're right, you're right.
um, yeah. I know we
um,
talked, with him though. In all seriousness, I know we talked about this before. My favorite thing about him was when situations arose, he acted, right? He made a command decision. Everyone executed. I shouldn't say command decision. That sounds too militaristic, right? He made a definitive decision on a path forward. They continued on that path forward. As new information came in, he assessed that. He never stopped it to do the analysis. He kept the ship moving. As he realized that new information would change, right, the pathway, he redirected, right? He didn't stop, turn, and pivot. He sort of worked his way over where he needed to go. And I just think that that's so great because it's not that stop, start, stop, start. He let people get things through to completion because it was just that long burn, and I think that's great.
well, and I know I believe we've talked about this before, where it's like people, they don't need the stop start, right? That's a leadership thing that is a hesitation on their part, which happens.
Yeah.
But people need decisions and they need action. If you tell them what to do or the direction that you're going, most people are going to do it, right? Not because of compliance, but because just make a decision. That's what they want. And once you've made that decision, I think more people would be surprised at how many folks will rally around that when it's
Yeah.
not like, oh, it took you 7 years to make this to cool.
Yep.
And we're going to stop tomorrow. Cool. Right. So yeah, that's a big thing there where, yeah, he just, it's going to keep going. If we need to pivot, if we need to modify the path, we'll do that. But we keep moving.
Yeah. I've been the victim of the stop start thing so many times. And the the killer for me too is you fall into that, you get nothing done, right? Or you get nothing out of your workforce because they it's a safe gamble that if I just don't do anything, it's not going to matter because it's going to change tomorrow. And like like I said, I've been the victim, like I've self-inflicted that wound as a leader to myself, but I've also absolutely been the employee like many, many times where it's like man, they want this paper done tomorrow, but there's a high probability nobody's gonna look at it. I'll take the risk. I won't do it. And if they ask me, like, oh, forgot to upload it, and then frantically pound it out, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, I gotta tell you, nobody's ever been able to call the bluff. So that's one of those things where you fall in that category. I'm also smiling because your cat is being absolutely adorable right now, just sort of falling awake, falling asleep. Oh my god.
This is his favorite thing to do on Zooms. Yeah, it also reminds, so Commander Taylor's leadership style reminds me of this quote. And so the quote is like, in Africa, every morning there's a gazelle that wakes up and knows that it has to run faster than the fastest lion to stay alive. And every morning in Africa, a lion wakes up and knows that it has to run faster than the slowest gazelle in order to eat, to stay alive. And so then it goes on to say, it doesn't matter if you're the lion or the gazelle, when the sun comes up, you'd better be running. And so what I love about that is I feel like that's like the Commander Taylor thing, where it's like, it doesn't matter which side, you have to keep moving. Because kind of like you're saying, people, I'm not saying you, so don't feel called out. But like you're saying, it's like people get this learned helplessness and they get this aspect of complacency because you're going to change your mind in 4 seconds and all of this is going to stop. I'm not going to do it. Or people who'll just dig their heels in and be like, I'm not going to do it, period. And so, yeah, so it's like this thing of also not keeping people running. Like you said already, are you going somewhere? Okay. Also to keep people moving towards the goal. So like in the quote, right? Gazelle's trying to stay alive, lion's trying to eat. And so Commander Taylor trying to keep Terra Nova moving effectively. And it's all for a purpose. It's not just like, just keep moving, just keep moving. Like, no, here's the direction. And does something actually need to stop? I think that's the thing I see a lot is people are like, oh, let's put a halt on this. It's like, why? Well, we don't think people are going to be comfortable with this decision. Okay, I understand that you're talking about buy-in, and that's part of leaders' responsibility, business partners' responsibility to get that buy-in. But here's the thing, you have to get the buy-in. It's not a choice, this is happening. So you also need to figure that out to keep it moving. And I've seen some groups do that really well, like within an organization, all the, BUs that fall under that. I've seen some BUs do that super well. And it's like they have the ability to keep moving forward. And then others to move forward.
Absolutely. You froze up there for a moment. I don't know if I froze up on your end.
My internet connection is unstable.
Okay, just like my personality. Got it. No, that is such a great point. I think with Commander Taylor to um that just the driving force, like you said, and I think your lion gazelle analogy is so great, and that's him is just action, right? Inaction is unacceptable. Action must be taken, whether it's the right action or the wrong action. Either the wrong action is still better than inaction in this particular situation. So yeah, definitely like a great character, a great leader, and trust, right? His trust in other people, right? That fresh start, fresh book, ability to change his mind on someone or about someone when new evidence is presented, and giving I hate to say giving people the benefit of the doubt because I don't really care for that. Like in this situation, I don't care for that. It's um uh you can change his mind, right? It either way, good or bad, and it's not a one-time thing. It's not an on switch and then it goes to off and it never comes back. You can keep jumping back and forth, but not in a wishy-washy way with him. It's very you can lose and earn the trust with him in a flow state. I'm sure there's a breaking point, but we didn't get to see that at this point.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, I loved the leadership that was shown in this series. I do wish the series was 10 seasons longer. But yeah, I find that I do go back to this not only because it's an entertaining show, but also because there is this level of inspiration and kind of watching these team dynamics and watching these leaders and how they interact and the decisions that they make.
Yeah, one of the people that I wish we could have seen more of was Mariah. Um uh wait, Sixers boss, what's her name? Did I just make
Mira,
up? Mira. What did I say?
not Mira, but we're moving on.
Gesundheit. But so I think her leadership style was interesting because I almost could commiserate because she was sort of in between a rock and a hard place, right? She wanted to do the best things, but she had like really terrible senior leadership as far as like her, what we could see as like external threats. I don't know how I want to say that, but like the folks that she was reporting to or that were she was beholden to, right, were very threatening, right, about her safety, the safety of her team members. And so she had to do a lot of things that she probably didn't want to do or wouldn't do as a person because there was like, again, it's a television show. She had like that threat of death, right? Or bad things happening to her family or her never seeing them again and them not making it through the tunnel. So she had like this balance that she had to do. And I thought that would have been really interesting to see blown out a little bit more.
Yeah, it was essentially the inverse of what people were experiencing on Terra Nova
Yeah.
without that strong leadership. Like, this is what happens when you don't have good direction, when you don't have good air cover, top cover, right, for the decisions that you're making and the things that you're doing, and you're not empowered. You act from a very toxic, desperate place. And so, yeah, so like even in watching like the two groups, it's also to think about just as a leader, how are the people in my organization behaving? And what is the impact that, what is my role in that? Like, I think if more people could look at that, some people are like, oh, it's systemic. Well, you're also part of the system. I'm not saying it's all your fault, but you're part of that system. So
Yeah.
what is it that you can impact to make this better? Or maybe you need to leave that system because if it's that damaging, then you being a part of it is you also saying, I'm okay with this.
Yeah. No, like I said, I'm really glad you pointed the show out to me because I would have never I would have glossed over it otherwise. So yeah, it's a shame it got canceled, but there are a lot of really great leadership um examples in the show for sure.
Great. And I'm glad you enjoyed it.